Hello, beautiful creatives. Here is the stencil that I put onto this cutting board that I will be burning today. Using the universal tip, I had to remember to turn my machine up, turn the heat temperature up quite a bit higher than what I usually do on a lot of my burns, because this cutting board is definitely a hard wood. So I started out going over my stencil with the universal tip and burning deep enough so that I can go back and remove any traces of the carbon copy before continuing on with my burn. So you can see how I've kind of got the burn on there, but yet the carbon copy shows through a little bit. So I just took a lightweight sandpaper 120 and I just very gently went over, 220. See, my mistake. And I very gently just kind of rub over top of it to make sure that I get off any traces of that carbon copy that's still left on there, and that I still have my lines burned in deep enough. But when I find when I'm burning over the carbon copy, a lot of times it almost kind of smears that ink around. It makes a little more of a mess than what I care to have. So that's why I like to kind of wipe it off with the light sandpaper and then go back over and finish my burns. I had burned deep enough so that I would still have my lines there, but now I go back over and turn the temperature up even higher. On this burn, for the majority of it, except my shading, I had my temperature turned up to about a 6.5, so at some points even a 7. So again, it's because this wood is a very hard wood. Normally I only keep my machine set at about a 4 when I'm doing burns on different types of wood, but for this particular one, I had it between a 6.5 and a 7, except when I was going back and doing the shading, which you'll see later on. So I just kind of go back over and retrace all of my lines again using the universal tip, and I will alternate back and forth between this tip and the pointed angled tip for real tiny pieces that I need to get at. So I just kind of am going over and recreating all of the basic outline right now. And then see, now I jumped right into the pointed tip and going around adding some shading. I'm kind of laying it down and just kind of pulling it. I again have my temperature set at around a 7 to get a nice dark deep burn into this hardwood. So I can also turn it over and use the very, very tip of that point for a polka dotted effect. I am kind of go back and forth through this piece, some line work, but a lot of dot work in here as well. That's how I'm going to gain some of my shading and how I'm going to create some of my shapes. So for this kind of circular pattern right here that I'm doing, I took a pencil and very ever so lightly just kind of drew a guideline kind of around in the circular shape that I wanted to follow, so that I could go back and just kind of create the dotted effect over it. I'm feathering it out on the ends to be a little skinnier, and it's going to be wider in the middle and kind of go down in between to kind of emboss the shape of what I have here on the two bottom petals. So and then I'm going back through, and you'll see in some closer up shots I'm creating some more dotted effect details and some flower petals and some teardrop shapes throughout this piece by just kind of lightly tapping and spacing them out. And then once I kind of have my pattern laid out, I go back and continue to tap over top of certain areas to really darken them up. So again, this pointed angled tip is very universal as well, really. So I'm kind of going back in between and creating some shading, just kind of dragging it back and forth with some lines. And then I will eventually flip it over and use the back side and kind of drag the pointed tip along to create a darker burn and a deeper shading. I'm trying to layer these levels of shading, and once I get into really going back through, I'll turn the machine down, sometimes to a 3.5, sometimes to a 4, to get all of the different depths of burn that I want to get, the different darkness levels. Because when you have the highlight, when you have the pieces that you haven't burned, they act as the highlight. But you need to have those really dark pieces in order to add a little depth to it, and then have some of those in-between shades that really makes it pop, makes it seem a little more three-dimensional instead of just a flat piece. So again, using the point of this tip, I can go back and I can draw with little tiny lines. I can create little circles that I don't want to be filled in solid. I can really get into those little tiny tight spaces, creating some more polka dots where I want them, and really going back over that to create some depth, a little more darkness to certain areas, and to really just give it a unique flair. Also for laying on its side somewhat. My hand's a little bit in the way, but when you lay it a little bit on its side, you can drag it along and create those very strategic lines as well. So you can get a nice straight, pretty defined line when you lay them sideways and very, very, very pencil thin. And then going back, and like I said, I can twist it around and lay it the opposite way and drag it to add that shading over top of these pieces, which I will do later on. So I just kind of go back and forth creating these polka dots, this different effects, layering them on. So this is my first real attempt at a cutting board, and like I said, it's definitely a harder wood than what I'm used to burning on. Once I got the heat set to the right temperature and kind of played around with it a little bit, I did start to enjoy it. But in the beginning, it was a little frustrating trying to, get things set so that they weren't so overly hot that it just burns right through and leaves a charred mark, and to be hot enough to really make an indent into this wood. So I would definitely say be prepared for that if you decide to work on something that is like a cutting board, that needs to be a hard wood for its purpose, of course. So I'm just kind of going back through and creating some more little design effects as I go through the swirl into the center of this pattern. You can kind of see that it's really starting to take shape. There's some leaves in there that I've kind of put some of the center through. I'm kind of creating a little scalloped effect through these little swirl pieces here, and then I will go back through and put some dots in the middle, but I'm really trying to just get a little pointed scallop effect all the way down the whole line of this little swirl that I have going on here. So, and then I can also create these little teardrops kind of effects down towards the bottom. And I'll go back through and shade, just give it a little accent shade to a little later on. So I've worked on spoons, I've worked on forks, and getting into a cutting board just only seemed like the next step so that I could start putting some sets together. It's definitely been a little fun. I have a few more that I'm going to do some different designs on, and I hope that you'll check those out in the future. But for now, like I said, being my first cutting board that I've ever done, it's definitely been a learning experience that I've enjoyed, and I hope that you guys can learn a little something from, the mistakes that I make. I shouldn't say mistakes because it's always a learning curve, but from the things that I've done that I hope to try to teach you guys from, to save you a little bit of aggravation. So now I'm using the ballpoint tip, and I'm just kind of going back around where I have those scallops drawn along the swirl there, and I'm just kind of adding some little dots in between each and every little tiny scallop along the way. Now I have switched to my other pen here. Instead of using the wire tip, I have attached the tip that is kind of the circular tip and a little hollow in the middle. See, you can see the way that burns there. Now you can kind of see towards the center of my piece, the burn is a little dark on that circle. Again, this is a different pen. I had never burned on this wood with that pen before, so I had it set a little hot for sure. It definitely left its mark, so I turned it down slightly to do the other circles that I was going to work on. so that I was getting something more of a burn that I really wanted to get. But I can, again, go back over with a little light sandpaper and just kind of take off a little bit if that is just a little too dark in some places. So back to the universal tip. Now I am kind of leaning it on its side. I'm going through and I'm kind of dragging in between, and I'm leaving little highlighted spaces out that are little circular sections. So if you look really close, you can kind of see in there, in between all of those scallops, there's little tiny light circles that I just was laying this tip to the side, kind of dragging around it to create those. Those are left unburned. Now jumping back up into the leaf, I'm turned the machine way down. Now it's about a 3.5 right now. And I'm just kind of laying the pen on its side slightly with this universal tip, and I'm kind of dragging. I'm dragging from the definite outside line and kind of dragging in just to create a really soft shading. I'm going back through some of these teardrop shaped little tiny leaves, and I'm just very quickly kind of rubbing the side of it over these little sections at a very low temperature to create just a slight shade to it, just a very light burn. I can go back over and I can continue to layer my shading to make it darker as I want, but I would prefer to start out pretty light. That way I can build up the shading, but it's not going to get away from me. It's not going to get too dark right off the bat. And then, well, let's face it, then I'm screwed, right? Then what do? No, you can really take some sandpaper and lighten it back up if you really needed to, but that gets more difficult depending on what part of the pieces that you're working on. So remember to try to just turn your heat down when you're getting into your shading so that you don't have to get into that kind of situation. So I'm just kind of, again, going around and adding a little more shading to some of these little leaf effects throughout my little swirls here. I hope that you guys always gain a little bit of knowledge from my videos, my tutorials. I try to give you the pointers of the things that I am doing, the tips and tricks and the mistakes that I'm making and the ways that I'm learning and the things that I'm learning and how to fix them as well. So if you are, please always subscribe to my YouTube channel, comment below this video, and I am more than grateful to get right back to you to answer any questions or comments that you might have. If you have any suggestions on what you would like to see me burn next, or if there's something that you're looking forward to learning, please always comment below my videos or jump on over, subscribe to my YouTube channel and jump on over, and you can ask me any questions that you would like to there. I will be more than happy to answer anything that I can for you guys, and just keep this as really as value, as learning a new trick, a new trade. That's why I'm here, guys. I'm here to try to help other people through my journey, to try to teach you. So now I just jumped into going around the outside, and I have again the pointed tip, and I'm kind of laying it flat here now, and I'm going around the very outside edges, just adding in some more shading, and very lightly, so that it doesn't look, again, like such a flat piece. I want even the outside to kind of pop off the board, kind of stand out a little bit. So we're almost there, guys. We're almost there. You can see a little bit of the shading around the outside. You can see how some of this darks and lights are starting to come together. So I just have to put some of the finishing pieces on it. I'm going to go back around. I'm going to do a little bit more shading on the inside, kind of tweak just certain areas that I feel like I need to add just a slight little bit more depth to it, and just create that pop, create that little extra piece that it really needs, so that it really stands out across this board. And then I will show you the complete piece. And here we go, guys. Here it is completed. Here is my first cutting board. I hope that you like it. I hope that you guys learned something from it. Feel free to comment below, subscribe to my YouTube channel, let me know what it is that you would love me to work on next, or what it is that I could teach you guys next. I'm here to add value and to help you guys get into your creative mind. So I hope everybody has a beautiful day. Much love and appreciation, guys.